guys? Today we're going to start working on Haltech stuff. So this is basically everything I got. So it's an Elite 1000 ECU. I got the coolant temperature sensor, oil pressure and oil temperature sensor, boost control solenoid, GPS speed input module, because there's no way to hook up the cable speedometer signal to the ECU as far as I know. I had a friend who did the same kind of Haltech stuff on a Legacy, and he had an issue with that, so I just went ahead and bought one. I think it'll be easier to set up. And then I got the gauge art can gauge. This is basically a multifunction gauge. You can have, like, I think 4 screens of 4 different items, or maybe 8 screens of 4 different items at once. So that's really cool. I can have like boost and wideband and coolant temperature, oil temperature all on the same one, and then have oil pressure and, you know, blah 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 on the others. So that's really cool. You can customize it with your phone and everything. And then this is a wideband controller. So it's the sensor right there. So what this does is it acts as your wideband, but it uses the CAN network, which is a computer area network, I think, to communicate with data for the signal for the wideband instead of voltage, because voltage can vary, I guess. So it's basically just a more accurate wideband, which, since this ECU does active fuel correction and self-learning, it's really important that it's actually accurate. So and then I got the crimper set, which these have been coming in handy a lot. These are for crimping on terminals, or the pins for connectors, basically. And it also came with depinning tools. And I got the Haltech harness adapter. This is for basically an early WRX or Liberty in Australia. But if you have your Legacy set up for a 20G ECU, like a Rob tune, or even just regular 20G ECU, it's really easy. It's just a few wires to modify, and it's coilover plug. But this will basically plug straight in, no problem, if you're already set up for a 20G ECU. If you're not, then just look up some of the threads on like Legacy Central, because you basically just cut a couple wires, and then it's coilover plug. So you have to either use like one of Rob's adapters to run WaveSpark or whatever. But honestly, if you're using a Haltech, you could just tell it, oh, you're WaveSpark, and set it up that way. So yeah, so I kind of have a plan for where this stuff is going to go. A lot of it I've already installed. So this sensor, that sensor, the boost control solenoid, I've already kind of installed. I need to find the connector for that so I can put that on. I still need to install this GPS speed and the gauge and the wideband controller and the ECU itself. But I did the sensors while the engine was out, so the coolant temperature sensor is buried in there on the crossover pipe. The oil pressure and temperature combination sensor is just below the heater core lines right there. You can barely see it. And then, yeah, so those are already installed. Boost control solenoid is right here. I've got an external wastegate, so I've got the hoses plumbed to that with the T-fitting, and that'll get zip tied up a little bit better. But I need to find the connector for this because I'm not actually sure where it went. So yeah, so let me start showing you where I think the harness adapter and ECU are gonna go. Alright, so I've just been trying to test fit some things very unsuccessfully, so I don't know that I'll show a whole lot of it, but so far this is what I got. Basically, got the ECU crammed up there. That's the glove box area. Sorry, the lighting's terrible. I pulled out a bracket that had these two control modules. This one's an illumination control module. Not sure what the other one is, but those I can plug in to right here and just stick up higher. They were on a bracket where the ECU is now. So I've got the harness adapter running through behind the radio and down to there. I think this is gonna work. It's gonna put some tension on the harness, so I'm just gonna have to keep playing with it and see if it's gonna work out. I also stuck the GPS speedometer unit. It has double-sided sticky tape, so I just stuck it right there. Plugged in the wire that comes with it, with the extra here, and then it runs up through there, through the A-pillar, and up to right there. So that will be my GPS speedometer, and then plugs in CAN right here. Or actually, that's not even CAN. It's one's a signal that goes to one of the inputs to the ECU, and then the other two are just power and ground. So I will do that at some point. And then this stuff, I started fitting the wideband controller, which I'll show you on this side. So I've got the sensor right there, basically runs underneath the intercooler, goes through the clutch cable hole, which I'm using for a lot of my wiring. Comes out, let's see if I can show you this. Comes out right here and goes into the box here, which this will probably get secured underneath here somewhere. And then the other two connections, one goes to the gauge and one goes to the ECU. And then the gauge actually has, I don't have the gauge up here, but the gauge actually has two of those connectors, so you can actually piggyback another CAN function off of the gauge and just kind of keep going from one to the next. I don't think I'll need to do that unless I add something, but so basically this wire then goes across back over here and actually says ECU right on it. So this one will plug into the ECU, and then these two wires need power and ground, and then this one, what was that one? I'm getting a little confused. Let me see if I can figure out which one that was. Is that the same one? Yeah, I think I'm just confusing myself. That's the same one. So that's, yeah. Yeah, so this one's not going anywhere yet. Basically, this is from the wideband. That will plug into this right there, get power and ground there, and then this will plug into the ECU. Hopefully that's not too complicated, but that's literally like the only spot I could find for the ECU. I tried putting it behind the radio, and with the way that the connectors go in, there's just no way to fit it and have it plugged in. Like, I could fit it in there, but then not be able to plug anything into it. So I really wanted to get it inside the glove box, but the harness adapter just isn't long enough. So you can even see, like, so this is the adapter box. So that's my stock connections right there, which of course are all modified from having Rob tunes and 20G ECUs. So that will basically just barely plug into that. And I'm gonna have to make sure that way up high in there, it's not putting too much tension on it, or it's not gonna break a wire or something over time, you know, because the whole reason I'm doing this ECU is to have something modern and have the car, you know, stand the test of time. So, and then this is the connector where we'll be plugging in all the different inputs and outputs, like different wires on here for 5-volt output, 1 to 5-volt input, you know, sensor grounds, stuff like that. Like the GPS input will go in here, all that stuff. So, and actually the wires that are in here, they came with the adapter harness, but they don't actually do anything on the particular ECU that I have. I have the Elite 1000, and those are for like the Elite 1500 and 2000. So it doesn't really matter, but they won't be doing anything, the ones that are already there. So I'm just going to be plugging in more inputs and outputs basically right there, which seems counterintuitive because it goes into the box going into the harness, but I guess there's some magic in here that happens, and it actually sends it back out through the other connectors to the ECU. So it seems confusing because it's facing the opposite direction that you would think, but that's where you put in inputs and outputs. So I'm just going to keep test fitting things and kind of updating you where things are going. I know it looks like, you know, just a total fucking mess, which it is. So yeah, I'll just try and keep updating. So to clarify real quick, the wideband controller, which is right here, has the multifunction gauge plugged into it because it has another CAN input. So it has a CAN, basically it has two CAN connections. One goes to the ECU, and then the other one is to be able to piggyback something else. Because it's data, you can do that. So this connection right here is actually the multifunction gauge. Then this goes to the ECU, which runs across inside there. And then I just now got it plugged in up in there, right there. It's kind of blurry, but let's see if I can get it to focus. It's right there. So that's now plugged in. Then this right here, I just need to add power and ground, which I have running out here right now. So that's, I feel like I didn't explain it very clearly, but that's basically the way it's working. And then I just plug these back in and stuff them up here. I might end up zip tying them or something. But that's, I'm pretty happy with that location, especially as opposed to, I was going to basically tape it or somehow adhesive it to the bottom of the heater box right there, which I don't really like the idea of, especially because my passengers will be kicking my CAN connection, so didn't like that. The harness adapter wasn't quite long enough to go underneath the carpet, and I had the same problem with kicking the CAN thing. It would be like down here, and every time you'd hit it, it would probably break the wire. So I'm liking that location. You can actually see it a little bit better from behind right there. So if you pull the radio out, you can see the back of the ECU nice and tucked away, and then it's just barely long enough to plug in right there. Doesn't have too much tension on it, but I'll double check and make sure it's okay. And then I got to clean up all this wiring. Believe it or not, this is after I've cleaned up a lot of my old wiring, which was just a nightmare. So yeah, it's pretty bad. So the last thing that I actually need to run to the ECU will be a vacuum line to right here, which might be difficult to get it to not be pinched, but I need to hook up a vacuum line there and run that back through the same hole through there. And that's basically going to go straight to the top of the manifold, to this nipple. So, but that's how the ECU uses its built-in map sensor. It's got to have a vacuum line going to it. I wish I could make it shorter than it's going to be. It's going to be super long, but for now it's what I can do. So this is the tuning cable. It's basically just a USB. It's got like the weird square USB on one side and regular USB on the other. That's gonna plug in right there, and then there's also another USB connection, but I'm gonna plug into that top one. I'll probably coil it up here somewhere, and maybe even drill a hole in my glove box, because I think it'd be really cool if I want to do some tuning, or even just plug into the ECU, just open the glove box and plug in the USB. Or maybe I'll actually have the slack in the glove box, that way I can just, you know, pull it out and plug it into a laptop, whatever. But I think that'll be pretty cool, so I'm going to do that right now. It's kind of hard to film and do any of this stuff, like I literally just have one hand, so unfortunately this is kind of the way it is right now. Until Preston gets back, maybe you can help me. So with the glove box installed, this is just kind of temporary. There it is, right there. So I'll have that USB plugged in right there, essentially. Everything's pretty much out of the way though, and it's working pretty well. But yeah, that's basically it. So I'm not positive I'm using this glove box either, because the key doesn't work for this one, because this is from the other dash, but my other one's gray, so I was having a hard time trying to transfer it over too. It's got this stupid foam. But at the same time, it's kind of funny that I'm using the old interior from Rob's original car from Rob Tune, and I'm also taking out my Rob Tune and using a Haltech. So kind of ironic, but it is what it is. So back under here in the nest of wiring, you can see the harness adapter here. I don't think it has too much tension on it. Like, I can still move it around. And then this right here is actually the body control module, I believe. Normally, it is, sorry for the motion sickness. Normally it's bolted up, let's see if I can even find where it's, oh, there it is. Normally it's on those studs right there, basically next to the steering column. I moved it to fit the harness adapter to the old stock ECU location, and I bent the bracket on it. So, see if I can show you. See that hole right there? If I push it up, I can't even show you. Basically, I can zip tie it up there. Yeah, see that bolt hole right there to that bolt hole right there. I can zip tie it up out of the way. And it's kind of held by this other harness right here. So that'll be tucked up there like that, nice and out of the way. Yeah, and then it's my starter relay, my kill switch stuff, and then the wideband controller will probably be sticky taped up like that, nice and out of the way, so you to make sure it fits with the trim piece. And then yeah, and start basically putting the interior back together. I'm excited to see if that 9K tack works and everything else. So yeah, I'm just gonna keep picking away at it. I might get the gauge cluster in about now. So I basically just took that harness I was making. I used a label maker to label all these. It says my ignition stuff and all the Haltech sensors. I ran that through the clutch cable hole back there. It comes out under the booster and then comes out right here, and that will get spliced into this connector right there, going into the adapter box. And then I've got my wideband controller up here. I've got the gauge art can gauge here, and then this is the one that goes back to the ECU with, it needs these two power wires hooked up. And yeah, that's basically how it's gone. So just securing things up out of the way where I think it would be reasonable, and then I need to go through and essentially decide where each of these are going to go in this connector, and then I need to go into the ECU and tell it, like for instance the 5-volt one, tell it what that 5 volts for, or each signal, tell it like, oh, that's the intake air temp signal and all that. So I'll basically just hook them up and then plug into the ECU with the laptop and try and get those all working, and then should be able to try and start it. So, but I'm gonna keep working away at this mess, trying to get it a little bit more organized, see if I can actually get the panel on once I'm all done. But I think having those labels there will be definitely nice for the future, for when I come back in here to work on it inevitably. So yeah, that's just what I'm working on. Alright, I've been making a little progress. I got the boost controller wired up. The polarity on these don't matter, so it doesn't matter if you switch the wires, but crimped on the connector there, ran that underneath the dash, or underneath the booster, tripped on exhaust. See if I can turn my light on. Back under here, kind of comes out with that harness right there. Comes around, goes into this harness. I ended up using the factory boost controller wire, which is tied in right up there, just because there's no spare outputs on the Elite 1000, so I'd use one of the existing outputs for the ECU. So I just used the factory boost controller one. And then that got ignition power here, coming right off the ignition switch. I'm still going to hook this one up later to, I think that I'll use that for the GPS speedometer, which I haven't hooked up yet. But everything's pretty much hooked up. Looks a lot less terrible than before. I still need to tidy up a lot of these and get them up out of the way. This will all be tucked up out of the way. Still need to hook up a constant power to one of my gauges. But yeah, just started putting oil in it because I'm getting close to that point. Put 5 quarts in it, and I think next I'm going to get the laptop and start trying to tell the tune which wires I wired to what, which I have all written down here. So out of the auxiliary connector, these are the pin numbers. First one is the 5 volt to the oil temperature and pressure sensor, and then temp signal, oil pressure signal. 4 is a ground for sensors, so I combined the oil gauge and the intake air temp, and then I have intake air signal on one of the other inputs, which is number 10. So yeah, getting pretty excited. So I'm just gonna go get the laptop now and start trying to see if I can figure out how to tell it what's going on. So I've got my laptop hooked up. It's USB going right through there. I can plug it straight into the Haltec. So I definitely like that spot for it. It's convenient. So I think, let me see if I can turn my light off. I'm basically going to open, sorry, it's going to be difficult to record while doing this. I have a tune that I've been working on that, let's see, Subaru 91 Turbo. This one. So this is a tune I've been working on, basically just inputting the info for my injectors and the fact that it's a 2.2 liter. This was a base map for a 20G Liberty RS or 20G WRX, like 93 to 96. So I've just been working off that. You know, told it it's a 2.2 and has the bigger injectors and all that stuff, and then just kind of started playing with some different things. Nothing like super important, but I still need to tell it what wires I wired everything to on the auxiliary connector. So let me if I go setup here, I think devices, or no, functions. So like right here, if I wanted to tell it air temperature sensor, I already did the calibration for this, but based on what, you'll basically enter numbers here for what, to calibrate your air temperature sensor that you're using for your car. So if you use a different one, you just have to calibrate it to your car, or calibrate it to that sensor rather. On wiring, basically right here you can do edit connection and tell it what wire you put it on. I'm gonna have to stop recording to go look at my notes and figure out which one it was, but that's basically what I'm gonna do here. And then after that's done, basically close out of that, go over here to diagnostics, and those things should show up on here if I turn the key on. At least I should be able to see the readings off of the sensors to see that they're actually working, and then I can see like, okay, I don't have oil pressure yet, and then I can disable injectors and crank it until I get oil pressure. So that should be pretty cool, but I'm gonna stop recording and see if I can get that done.
Good compression. It's got good compression for sure. Anything?
No, it's still like 1 PSI. I'm up to 1.5. PSI of oil pressure at the head. I don't know. It's the little tiny one right there that's flashing red.
We got oil pressure.
That's a huge thing.
Yeah. I mean, there's also oil through the engine now, so.
That's awesome, man.
Fuck yeah.
Okay, as you guys just saw, I got 90 psi of oil pressure while cranking. It's I'm not sure why it's flashing these errors at me, and the intake air temperature is at 248, which is not good. It's at like 0.03 volts, which is like off the scale hot. So I think I wired something wrong there. It also thinks it's at 100% throttle, so I might have to calibrate that. But yeah, that's a huge step forward. So if I fix that, I should be able to start it and actually have good oil pressure, which is something I was scared of. So yay. So I think that's where I'm going to leave this video. I just want to reiterate that I'm not telling anyone how to install a Haltech. There's plenty of videos of professionals installing Haltechs. I just wanted to make a video because I've never seen someone do it on a first-gen Legacy. So yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to teach anybody like this is how you should do it. I'm probably doing things wrong. In fact, I definitely did the intake air temp wrong. So I'll be going in to fix that. But for now, I'm really happy. It cranked. It has good oil pressure on the new built motor. So hopefully the next video will be, I'll have that stuff fixed and I will be starting it. Yeah, and then I have a diff to throw in. I got some mud flaps to put on, and I need to do a little ghetto alignment before I can take it to work for real alignment. Still needs coolant and power steering fluid and stuff like that. So, but yeah, so hopefully it runs in the next video. But thanks for watching. Yeah, and